it doesn't feel like work at all. It feels purely like I'm just having fun and I get to nerd out with my fellow econ people. I try to do that in class. The students do not reciprocate my passion for economics. Some of them do, but this is my opportunity to kind of share really cool stuff that I'm working on and stuff that I think can help you as well. So maybe in February, I got the bright idea. I'll say mid-pandemic, like it's still going, but this was, I guess, really in the middle of the pandemic. And I thought, I got some time. Maybe all the stuff that I'm doing on Twitter and stuff I'm doing on Facebook, maybe I can actually share that and talk about how you bring in economic content into the classroom. So I was already doing it in my classrooms. I would have students subscribe to the Morning Brew or subscribe to NPR's Marketplace, or they subscribe to, there's a really cool one called The Flip Side. Like I was getting these daily newsletters that I really liked, and I would see the economic content in it, and then I would tell my students about it. And then I realized kind of the worst part about it was that it was really kind of stopping with my students. I was really lucky if they told their parents about it, but I don't necessarily think that they were. And I realized that like my ability to connect news and econ together was it was only going as far as the classroom. And I thought, is there a better way that I can kind of get this out to other people and share that with other people? And so I really got the idea again. Abdullah is going to get a lot of references in this one because Abdullah is an incredibly motivating person for me. I try to surround myself with other people who are incredibly passionate about economics, and Abdullah is one of those people. And so Abdullah had written a newsletter for a long time, and I was like, you know what, I can write a newsletter. Abdullah is much better at it than when I started. And so like I learned a lot from Abdullah in the process. But basically, I write a weekly newsletter that takes concepts, either current events or trending topics, but it finds economic concepts inside of those. So I do it every Monday morning. It goes out every Monday morning. I write it on Sundays. And I realized that what's happening is that people will start sharing that with other people. So I've talked to other teachers and they're like, oh, I sent this to my students because we're working on the same topic. It might not necessarily be what you're talking about in class. I try to make it timing based on when I'm teaching. But one of the fun things I like about it is it's finding things that are happening and making it about economics. So I deliver it every Monday. I'm going to try to do something a little bit new every Friday to try to make things do a little bit more than Monday. But these are some of the headlines of just like the ones I've written from the past week. And one of the goals I realized was like, there are so many cool things happening and my students have questions, even if they don't realize that they necessarily have questions about it. So like the big one that we've been talking about for the past few weeks is like the supply chain issues. I would almost every day after class, somebody would come ask me a question about like the supply chain issues and stuff happening. And I found myself like repeating the same story. I was like, oh yeah, I know what's happening. This was like a cool chance to actually write about it, or any kind of news articles that were coming in. So I think these are the ones that I've done in order. So there was some really neat articles that were coming out about there are elephants in Africa who are no longer growing tusks. So it used to be a rare genetic condition, and now like they're noticing it more and more. And a lot of it comes back to this idea of common resources and poaching, is that when people were killing elephants, they weren't killing the ones without tusks because they want the tusks. And so like only the tuskless elephants were surviving. And so a little bit of it was a chance to talk about something that's happening, something that scientists have found, and then saying like, a lot of this comes out of economics. It's this idea of tragedy of the commons, and people are killing these elephants because they get benefits out of it. Or even talking about the Nobel Prize or Kellogg's going on strike. There's really cool things about incentives of like, would you be willing to get a tattoo in order to get free tacos for life? And so I try to find different places and share those things. And a lot of those are things that you're probably seeing. You're probably much more comfortable as well, seeing the news and saying like, there's the economic connection. And then thinking about how do we relay those out to people, relay those out to teachers. And so a little bit of it was I tried to do something that I'm very comfortable with. I like reading current events. I like reading the news. And so I try to have fun with it while also fitting in the economics. So one of my favorite things to tell my students is I show a lot of pop culture clips in the classroom, but I love telling them at the beginning of the semester that I'm going to ruin their favorite music, ruin their favorite TV shows, because I want them to see economics the next time they watch it. That's my dream. I'm waiting for the emails to come back later that say like, oh, I was watching The Office and I immediately thought of your class. Like if I can get them to remember those things, those are super helpful. And I realized I could do it here with the news as well. If I could kind of introduce a little bit of news topics in there, then I think I'm doing a good service to different places. So my own personal selfish plug, I would love for you to subscribe, but like I'm going to keep writing them even if not. But I realized that like the newsletter portion is things that people are starting to do more of. There's a lot of really great Substack newsletters that have been coming out over the past year. So like I subscribed to Dan Rather's Substack. He was one of the first ones that I subscribed to, where he talks about current events and politics and kind of that mixing of things and his own experience as a reporter. And then there's other economists who are doing like macro related stuff. I know Abdullah just started one, so I'm gonna give a plug for Abdullah's newsletter because I know he's starting one. For the most part, these newsletters they come out fairly rarely. Like mine only comes out once a week. The other ones come out sporadically. And so it gives me like this nice little dose to keep me motivated in the classroom. And then I get to share those with my students. So when students ask me about the Nobel Prize, I already have like a nice little, I have a nice place that I can send them if I need to send them a link, or I've already kind of done some of the research in terms of reading it. And I found that super helpful. So those are little ways that I kind of try to bring it, not necessarily into the classroom, but I'm ready for them when it's classroom time to talk about it. The other one, which is probably the one that is the biggest for me in terms of just like career wise, I call myself a director. I don't actually have a title for it because like it's just a website. So director sounds like a fancy title enough. The Economics Media Library is something that I'm finding a shockingly large number of people use without realizing like that there's that many people using it. It is a great resource if you're looking for pop culture or clips to bring into the classroom or to share with students. I started it not in order to share work. That was not my original intention. I've used pop culture since I started teaching as a graduate student, but the problem was everything was on YouTube. So I would have a list of YouTube links for students, and then I would just send them to the students later. But every now and then, there would be links that I didn't have on YouTube, or I owned them. I don't want to say I owned them because like, I didn't create it. I had the file on my computer and I didn't have a way to give that to the student for them to review it. And so in 2014, I started the website, the Economics Media Library, as a way to just help my students review basically for their exams. They wanted to go back and rewatch the videos, or they wanted to just rewatch them for the exams. They weren't watching them casually. And so in the beginning, there was only maybe like 20, 25 clips on there. I show maybe like 1 or 2 per lesson. Today, I checked it before this presentation. There are 575 clips available on the website. There is some overlap with other stuff. So there's a lot of pop culture stuff out there already. So there's websites for The Office, Big Bang Theory, Superstore, Breaking Bad, Parks and Rec. There's all these other websites. I tried my very best when I made the website to not double cross all those. So these really are kind of 575 clips that you can't find on Economics of The Office, Economics of Seinfeld, things like that. Wide range of stuff. So television shows, movies, commercials, stand-up comedy. There's sections for news, there's music videos, there's so many different things. I do not show 575 videos. I always have to be a little careful. That I think is enough that people realize I don't show that many. When there was like 200 on the website, people thought I actually showed all of them. Most of the time it's people just contributing them. You probably have video clips that you've used or that you've shown. You've had references to TV or movie episodes, and you've talked about them in class. And so a lot of it is people will send me their recommendations. And so all of those clips have a topic, a title. It has the video so that you can play it in class if you want to. There are ways that you can download it depending on like what software you have or what accounts you have. But a lot of people also share it in their online classes, or they'll email students, or they'll put it in their LMS. So you might have like pre-class material, and it might say, hey, watch this clip from The Simpsons about Homer trying to decide whether he would rather have 3 kids or would he rather have money. And so you can see it in online classes where I can tell, because I can see like the backside of all the data when people will post these in discussion boards. So I can see like where people are watching this stuff from. So sometimes they're in discussion boards, sometimes they're in pages like in Canvas or Moodle or something like that. People submit a lot of stuff. And so I tried to make sure I grabbed 2 people who had submitted stuff rather than my own creation. But there's other parts to it as well. So they're organized by like, is it a movie, is it a TV show? But like, that's not really probably why you're looking for it. But they're organized by topics. So there's micro topics, macro topics, behavioral topics, and every video has tags on it so that you can go and you can kind of get lost in a rabbit hole and just start looking at other clips about incentives. And then you might accidentally stumble onto unintended consequences. And then you might end up in government policies. There is a search feature. I will admit the search feature is like the default search feature. So like if you spell something wrong, it's not going to find it. So it's very like particular about the searching. But there's so many good things out there. And a lot of this is where I can bring in some of, it is everyday life. It's not things that are necessarily happening now, but if I can bring in clips from The Simpsons, if I can bring in clips from Superstore, it helps me connect with students a little bit and show them that even their favorite shows are about economics. Economics kind of really drives decision-making, whether that's in an animated cartoon series, in a movie, or when they're trying to decide where they want to eat for lunch. All of these decisions kind of overlap, and I think film and TV are really good places for that. So the Economics Media Library, if you have any, if your stuff is not on there, I'd be happy to host it for you. I'd love to put stuff up there. But that's a really easy and simple way to get stuff to bring into the classroom. I am also involved in the Journal of Economics Teaching, which is a pedagogy-focused journal that was started in 2015. They publish now 3 times per year, 4 papers per issue, and 1 paper every issue is targeted to the K-12 space. I will admit that there's not much in the like K-6 space. So it says K-12. A lot of it is targeted towards high school presentations, but it's another place where, depending on the issue and depending on the topic, there are current event things happening, and people will talk about ways to present that in the classroom. So I absolutely love the Journal of Economics Teaching. I joined their board of directors also in February. All of these things came after I read those books. So I'm going to give credit to those books because they've helped kind of direct me in terms of things. But it's a really great place to talk about just different topics and different things that are happening and bringing them into the classroom. All of these are freely available, so you don't need a subscription to it. You don't need to be a member of Journal of Economics Teaching. Your library doesn't have to have it. They're all PDFs that are posted online, and you can go in and they have search features as well in those portions. And so a big portion is I want to show you kind of some, especially at the K-12 space, like which of the articles are targeted towards the K-12 economics. So a lot of them are written by college professors. Some of them are written by high school teachers or people in the community college space. And so the goal is really helping people teach better. So maybe it's about superheroes. It could be talking about analogies and how do we connect things that are happening in real life to stuff we're talking about in class. Maybe it's about ice cream. So I actually use a lot of the ice cream stuff in my class. That one's always a fun one. So there's like a mix of like active learning, but also like where do rebounds go? How do we teach price elasticity as an active learning exercise? So some is active learning, some is pop culture, and then some is like actual assignments and assessments. And so just the variety of stuff that is on that website, I think is super helpful. And so a lot of it is if you're sharing it with high school teachers or if you're sharing it with college educators, is sharing those resources. That's one of the really big things that came out of those books is not only sharing your work, but sharing the work of others. Is taking the time, if you're sharing their stuff, hopefully they realize you're sharing their stuff and they're going to start sharing your stuff. And this idea of like growing a sharing network is super, super helpful. So these are just a couple of them. But if you check out the website, there's more of them that come out all the time. I think actually in the most recent issue, there was one on using Pixar films. I think that's the most recent one. But they also have a lot of really great resources in terms of teaching economics, and it's pedagogy based, not necessarily like heavy on the empiric side of things. Very similar to my newsletter, so I'm going to go in the other direction on the newsletter part, is Econ Inbox. I absolutely love this as a resource. So this has nothing to do with me. I have no space in this particular part, but I wanted to share it just as a way to kind of reemphasize that earlier part of sharing the really cool work that other people are doing. Econ Inbox is operated by Marginal Revolution University. They will send you a personalized email with articles and podcasts and assignments and questions related to what you're teaching. And the key part is when you're teaching it. So if you tell them your teaching schedule of what you teach each week, they will send you a customized email every week with really curated media. So this is the example that's on their website right now. If you were teaching inflation this week, they would send you an inflation game where students can play different inflation resources, so they can like guess the price of how things have changed over time. They'll send you news articles related to shrinkflation, so it allows you to bring in something a little bit different. Part of the reason I put in this part is it's bringing in kind of those outside resources into the classroom. Some of them are going to be current, so like these top two are from 2021. Some of them will be a little bit older, and some of them will be video based, pop culture based, and they kind of come from a variety of different places. But this has also helped me in terms of bringing stuff into the classroom. So with my own personal newsletter, it's whatever I found in the previous week. And so I try to make it like super topical to that past week. This one has a lot of what I consider really stable examples and stable news articles. Stable in the sense of like, it's still current, even though it's 6 months old. So talking about inflation and how things have changed, they're going back a decade to think about like, what was it 10 years ago, instead of like, what was it over the past week or so. I've really liked this as a way to kind of share they're very good articles and very good videos. And they do a really good job with a lot of the stuff that they do. But this is like anytime I get this email in my inbox, like this is the one I'm always super excited for as soon as I see it, because I'm like, oh, what am I going to talk about in the next week? So they'll always send it to you like 3 days before you're supposed to teach whatever the lesson is. So I really, really like this one. It's a little bit different than than my own newsletter, but it's kind of in that same batch. The big portion that I really wanted to focus on, though, and what's really kind of changed my entire teaching perspective is social media. Social media can be both good and bad. There's plenty of people who've gotten in trouble for social media. I have gotten in trouble for the things that I say on social media. I don't have much of a filter. When it comes to if I think somebody's being treated wrong, I will say something. But with that said, this is actually where a lot of my inspiration comes from. So I've been involved in a bunch of different things over the past few months, but when it comes to writing my newsletter, in terms of where I get my topics, it's coming from Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Like that's where the articles are coming from. Each of them has a really vibrant teaching community. Everybody is slightly different. So I'm definitely more on the Twitter space. That's where I get all of my any news stuff, trending topics. Like that's where I'm learning about it, is on Twitter. But in the Facebook section, there are communities of econ educators who are sharing articles and sharing news stories. I'm friends with a bunch of econ educators that I've never actually met. So for example, Derek is a perfect example. Derek and I are Facebook friends. I have never Derek, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think I am. Derek and I have never met in person.
We have never met.
Never met. Okay.
We've had a beer on Zoom before, Zoom. And that's about it.
Okay. I figured that was it. But it's one of those things where like, right, I want to be friends with people who love economics. Even if I've never met Derek and I've never had a beer in real life with Derek, I consider Derek a friend of mine, and that I can follow what he's doing and I can see the cool stuff he's posting. And if he's posting things related to NAEE, if he's posting things related to economics, like he is an inspiration for things that I'm going to put in my newsletter. On Twitter, Abdullah has been huge in terms of just the things he does and the things he shares. And Abdullah is an inspiration in the sense of like, when I'm presenting, I want to see the stuff that Abdullah is doing. Instagram has slightly different people. So like, I know Derek is on Twitter, but he doesn't really use Twitter. Derek is a Facebook person. But I know that there's people who they will create an entire Instagram persona of teaching economics. And there's so many cool accounts. Their whole purpose and the whole function is about how do we teach economics using images and cartoons and things we've drawn. And so a lot of it is, I don't necessarily think you should be in everything. You don't need to, I'm spread too thin. So I don't really use Facebook that much. I'm awful at Facebook. But I'm on there because there's a resource and there's people there that I can go out and share those things with and get inspiration from other people. So if you have been hesitant to do social media from a personal standpoint, I would encourage you not necessarily to do it from a personal standpoint, but to give it a try from a professional standpoint. There are a lot of faculty that I know, especially on Twitter, where they are not personally on Twitter, but they're professionally on Twitter. So I know Jamie Wagner is a really good example of that. She has Prof. JWags on Twitter, where she is presenting her professional persona on Twitter. Or if you're presenting your professional work on Instagram, I think I've gotten so much out of that, that I think it's incredibly valuable. It's an incredibly valuable resource for me of just bringing in ideas, both to the classroom and and to my newsletter as well. And with that, I'll finish with the kind of the last portion for the last couple minutes and just kind of tying it all together where a lot of this motivation and stuff came from. I've found that I've been incredibly fortunate to have a lot of really great opportunities because of all of these different avenues and spaces that I've been in. So because I've been really active on Twitter and part of the Econ Ed community, I was invited to write a book during the pandemic. So the pandemic kind of hit at a really good time that I was able to talk about Parks and Rec and introduce economics in a variety of different ways. And so I was able to write a book about it. If you're interested, it's available. Don't think of it as a book pitch, but there's so many cool opportunities that really come back to kind of, I said, validation and inspiration is teach what you know. You know a lot about economics, and a lot of it is sharing that and being confident in what you're doing and sharing that with other people. And I've been incredibly fortunate and lucky that I get to do books and movies and all kinds of stuff, and then talk to you for just 30 minutes. But it's been super fun, and I hope that it's a little bit of a motivation. I would really say go back to those books. Those books were really motivating for me. There's a lot of cool stuff out there. Yeah, I think I hit it right at 30 minutes. I think we're right at 120.
My clock's just switched over to 120. That was perfect. Are there any quick questions for Jadrian anybody has? All right. Well, I hope, Jadrian, I've got one question for you. Are you
Sure.
going to share that presentation with us so we can do a conference wrap-up email and make sure everybody gets it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's super easy to do.
Awesome. That was the one question we had. All right. Well, thank you so much. We're going to get started soon here with our business meeting. We want to make sure everybody's over from the other room back into here. So that's going to take a minute. So why don't we take a couple-minute break here? I'm just looking at my PowerPoint to see what time we have set to start the business meeting. So we've got the business meeting starting at 1:25. So we've got 5 minutes here. Feel free to take a break, and we'll start off the business meeting with a welcome from me, the minutes from last year, treasurer's report and budget, followed by committee reports, recognizing the executive committee, election nominees for next year, and Kim Holder looking ahead. So we got 5 minutes.
Yeah, so I signed it.